Ron Siegel Radio, your home and mortgage connection.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
And hello again. Welcome to Ron Siegel Radio. This is the show with no real boundaries as we discuss current events, financial markets, politics, sports, even poking fun at the rest of the media. This is the show that connects the dots of confusion delivered by conflicting media reports. We connect the dots so you know the actions you can take, how your family or business can benefit in current events. Most of all, thank you for joining me. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day. We have a very focused show. We only chat about items that affect the roof over your head, your bank account, and anything I feel would benefit you. But before we get into our intriguing content today, please join me in welcoming our featured guest and first timer on Ron Siegel Radio. Cozy Wittman is with us. College Inside Track, welcome.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you with us. And let me remind you, if you ever have any home or finance related questions, I am the consumer advocate looking out for you. And you can reach out to me directly, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. Just remember, that's the number you call anytime for assistance. When you call that number, it comes directly to me first. There are operators standing by.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
While I do have a great team when it comes to developing a financing plan, a plan to save you money, I personally work with you. Even if you don't have any needs today, save this number in your phone for future reference. 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. And yes, of course, we are celebrating today. We celebrate every day on Ron Siegel Radio. I love to celebrate. But you look at it and you say, okay, today's National Best Friends Day. Okay. But I don't know about this one, Josh, because I say all the time, my best friend is my bride, and celebrate that every day. So I don't know what would be special about this one, but I guess it's a light celebration day. So that's what we have. That's what we're going with. And it is National Best Friends Day. Let's take a look and see what the markets are doing today. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 89 points. The NASDAQ is up 387 points. Wow, that's a nice one to see. Yeah, especially after Friday. S&P 500 is up 57. Oil is up $1.19 a barrel. Yeah, gold is up $9.50. Dude, you watch what gold is. Now, I don't want to ever give any financial advice on Ron Siegel Radio, so I just report what I see. And yes, I did have licenses to give financial advice. You can't do it in a public forum like this. But I did tell you when gold doubled, it went from $2,700 an ounce to about $5,300 an ounce in less than a year. And if you remember then, Josh, we should grab this tape of when we said this. I said anything that goes up that quickly can come back down that quickly. Be careful. And right now, from $5,200 an ounce, gold is now down at $4,340 an ounce. Yeah, ow! That's a little painful if you were buying back then. Although I still do believe we're going to see gold go significantly higher. Just I don't like things that go up that fast because you got to be really careful. 10-year Treasury is up 2 basis points in the mortgage bond, down 13 basis points. Remember, when the bond goes down, the yield goes up. It's straight mathematics. So we just watch it that way. Speaking of mathematics, I shared this on our social channels. It just fascinates me because we are here in the formerly Golden State. And I'm looking at this. And can we, I don't know, should we just say this state's election policies are a royal joke? I mean, I'm looking at this, the FIFA Cup, FIFA, whatever they call it. I'm not much into soccer, but from the time that the competition starts until the very end of the competition, 39 days. By contrast, California, okay, now arguably one of the technology capitals of the world, or at least it was until Gavin got in. Our election process, 67 days. Can you imagine 67
I
days?
got a bad feeling about this.
Early voting begins May 4th, and the deadline for the statewide certification, July 10th. Now, I don't want to say that there's room for corruption in there, but, going 67 days. Now, India, what do they have? 1.6 billion people in India, and they get their election done in one day. Florida, they know their answers by the end of by like 10 o'clock Eastern time. Yet California, 67 days. And you just have to wonder, now, how do you go from the person who's getting the most votes in Los Angeles for mayor, Karen Bass, to not getting any on certain drops? You just wonder about some of these things. What are the, I went to college. I studied at Chapman College. Now it's Chapman University, but yes, I am old, so it was a college back then. And one of the courses we had to take as one of the 3 degrees I got there was statistics. What do you think the statistical probability is for the candidate that has the most votes for mayor in any given dump of a significant number of ballots not getting anywhere near the statistical averages? Is there any possibility that really happened? Wait a second. This is California, and I know some folks that died 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They still get ballots mailed to them in the state of California. And does anybody check them when they put them back in the mail going back? You gotta wonder. This is California. We love our systems. And, I say all the time that you get what you vote for, but maybe in California, we're not getting exactly what we vote for. But I guess perspective is everything. Again, FIFA Cup, 39 days. Balloting in California, 67 days. And our topic today, we're talking about colleges. And yes, while I did go to Chapman College, I've always had a big, I don't know what the right terminology, envious. I've been a fan of USC. It was a tough weekend at USC. They had a great game on Friday afternoon. I was all excited in the College World Series tournament. And yesterday, a walk-off. Now, I don't want to say anything, but the center fielder, what the heck is sliding into the warning track with the game on the line? What's that all about? Unbelievable. So
What's the big idea?
and now USC gets to go on vacation. They're going fishing while North Carolina is going to the next round. Now, North Carolina was ranked higher than USC, but SC had the game. I don't know. It's tough being a sports fan because I'm also an Angels fan. So talk about another toughie. Angels lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. Tough week, Josh. I don't know about this. Watching some of these sports things and the Vegas Golden Knights. I know Josh was a Vegas guy, but Golden Knights, they took out my Ducks. Now they're in the Stanley Cup Championship. I think they've got a 2-1 lead right now. I think that's where they stand. So we're watching. It was still a great tournament. You are listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. When we come back, we're going to learn about college planning. I like the idea of learning about this because, there's a lot of misconceptions about colleges. There's a lot of misconceptions about where you should go. Should you even go to college? There's a lot of discussion out there. So we're going to talk with an expert on that. And $400 a month with no plan, $48,000 gone in 10 years. Do the math. You don't even have to go to college for that one. All that and more. Reach me anytime. Off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and
Are you a veteran, own a home, and need money? The Siegel lending team is here to help veterans refinance and get the money they need. The VA 100 lets you borrow up to 100% of your home's value, refinance your mortgages, consolidate credit cards, and lower your payments by an average of $700 a month. And the Siegel lending team knows that character means more than a credit score. Call 800-306-1990. That's 800-306-1990. Rate subject to change without notice. Licensed by the California Department of Corporations, NMLS 21037, and DRE number 0186945. You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990. 800-306-1990. The Mortgage Minute today being brought to you by rsrloans.com, rsrloans.com. And every day at this time, OBMMI, they provide the most comprehensive, accurate, timely, and interactive analysis of pricing ever conducted in the mortgage industry. Calculated from actual locked rates with consumers across 35% of all mortgage transactions nationwide. They don't tell us points paid, points received, or the APR. They tell us the number you put in your mortgage calculator to determine your principal and interest payment. If you don't have a mortgage calculator, shame on you. We give you a whole suite of calculators, or as I call them, illustrators. rsrlinks.com/calculators, rsrlinks.com/calculators. What did the markets do on Friday? Well, it looks like most of them were up. Conventional 30-year fix, 6.512. That was up. Jumbo 30-year fix, 6.674. 6.674. That was up. FHA 30-year fix, 6.353. That was up. The VA, we love our veterans. Glad to see that one down. VA 30-year fix, 6.119. And the USDA loan, 30-year fix. That's for our rural areas. Generally no down payment, 6.151. If you want our thoughts about the market, join our community, rsrlinks.com/HBOD. Community is free for listeners of Ron Siegel Radio, rsrlinks.com/HBOD. So what's going on in the markets today? Well, it's pretty simple. We've got the S&P 500 is up 60 points. Nice. 10-year Treasury, that one is up 2.5 basis points. Ow! Yeah, that means that mortgage bonds are down 13 basis points. That means interest rates are going up today. We'll watch to see what's driving that. Well, what is driving that? Well, okay, so we've got oil prices are off their highs. Oil is now up 71 cents a barrel after reports that Iran's military has ceased strikes against Israel. So what do you call a ceasefire when no one ceases firing? Just thinking out loud. Over the weekend, the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran was violated. Iran accused Israel of continuing strikes in Lebanon, to which they responded by firing missiles at Israel. It seems Iran felt they had to respond and did so with a moderate response to save face and not look like they did nothing. But the ceasefire appears to be back in play for now. I guess that's for just this minute. If I look at the news right now, it might change already. After the report, oil prices went from their highs of the morning, around $95 a barrel, to $92 a barrel, now down to $91.17 a barrel. Yields moved lower. One of the reasons yields have been higher is less foreign purchases of our treasuries. This is due to the rise in oil prices, which is denominated in dollars. Many foreign nations peg their currency to the dollar, which means they buy U.S. treasuries to repatriate their local currency into dollars. This keeps their currency weaker relative to the dollar. It's in their best interest to do this if they are exporting to the U.S. They buy treasuries, which softens their currency and strengthens the dollar against it because it makes, in dollar terms, the purchase of their exports more affordable and means more exports and business for them. Manipulating the markets a little? I don't know. But given what's happened with oil prices moving so much higher and the need to purchase oil denominated in dollars, if the dollar is strong, it costs them a lot more. As a result, they are sacrificing their exports to preserve the strength of their currency by not, at this time, buying treasuries. The lack of foreign demand in our treasuries is not helping yields. A little bit of an economics lesson there for you. ICE reported that home values nationwide rose 0.27% in May, which was a decent figure. Additionally, home values rose 90% of their market in 90% of their markets, which is the most widespread appreciation from ICE in over 2 years. Year over year, home values are up a little over 1%, but the annualized pace in May is just under 3.5%. Wow. That's pretty strong. Home values are holding in there despite higher rates. And this week, we're going to have existing home sales on Tuesday. We'll see the Consumer Price Index, CPI, comes out on Wednesday. And we've got jobless claims on Thursday. Not a lot of news this week, but that CPI report will be the biggie. That's the Mortgage Minute. Brought to you by rsrloans.com, rsrloans.com. So let's chat. I'm going to chat this morning. Cozy Wittman is with us. College Inside Track. Good morning, Cozy.
Good morning, Ron. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you with us. So we're learning with Cozy today is our topic. Tell us, what is College Inside Track?
So we help families find right fit schools, just like realtors will help families find right fit homes. We work with families to figure out what the right academic, social, and financial fit is for a family, and then help the student through the entirety of the process.
So does the student work directly with you, or does the family and the parents and the kids? I know when my son went to college 15 years ago, something like that. It was great because we hired a lady that did that locally, and she actually ended up meeting him at Starbucks away from here and went through everything with him. That was before Zoom was so prevalent, but
yeah.
How does your process work?
Yeah, so we start by just discovering where the student is at and where the family is at. And one of the things that we know to be true is that sometimes parents have thoughts about college that the students don't agree with, and vice versa, right? So we start just by kind of level setting and figuring out where everyone's at. And then the work does primarily get done with the student, because at the end of the day, what we really want to do is arm them with the right information to make a really good choice for themselves. And despite what you might think about your high schooler, when you get them really good information, they actually make pretty good choices. They just don't know how to do it on their own. That being said, parents are often funding this, and so they're part of the conversation as well. And what we really try and do is bring everybody on the same page. Sometimes the consultants joke they're as much psychologists as they are anything else, but working with the family we think is really important, while the base of the work does get done with the student.
So what is the scope of what you do? And again, I'm going to do through this from a 15-year-old lens.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was an application, and there was a FAFSA, and there was essays. Is it still somewhat similar to that nowadays, or how do all these things work? Maybe I'm even jumping ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So when we work with a student, the first thing we try and figure out is what is the right home for them, right? So starting in that social fit space is usually where we kick people off, because at the end of the day, they have to be comfortable where they go, or they end up transferring, which ends up costing the family more money typically. So in thinking about academic and social fit, we think about things like, is it the right rigor level? Is it teaching like the student likes to learn? There are a lot of kids who go to college where butt in chair, lots of auditory learning is not their best format. Good news, you don't have to learn like that in college. You can go to a school where you're more hands-on, where it's more project-based. So really digging in and figuring out more about the student is an important part of getting them in the right place. Social fit are all the fun things: size, location, culture on campus. Some kids want the, like, everybody goes to football on Saturdays kind of atmosphere. And other kids are like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't care about sports. So thinking a little bit about what the right atmosphere is for the student as well. And then as we help them build a college list, what we do is teach the student how to research the school. So what they don't have to do is that, like, walk in the dark with the tiny flashlight trying to figure out which schools might actually fit the list. We build the list for them, but then we teach the student how to research. So they're going to be responsible for kicking schools off. But we also coach around things like high school course selection, activities. Lots of people have this misconception that more activities are better, or I have to be well-rounded. The colleges actually don't want well-rounded students. So there are all these kids doing things they don't care about. And actually they're missing the things that make them uniquely them, which is what the schools are looking for. So coaching around all of that stuff. And then of course, the getting into schools, the essays, the applications, that process is much more extensive than it used to be at a lot of schools today. So if you look, for instance, at some of the more highly selective, you were talking about USC and Chapman earlier, those schools have an additional 5 to 7 essays along with the main essay. So helping kids really tell their story well. And then as they get acceptances, helping them evaluate their best opportunities. And that's the way we like people to think about it. I think colleges would love if you forget that you're paying them, but you're a consumer of this education, right? So thinking about it from a, how are you, college, going to help me, student, be successful on your campus is just a smarter way to go about it today.
One of the things we talk about from a financial standpoint is return on investment. Do you look at that is that a part of the evaluation process?
So it depends on the family, but as a company, we just had a long conversation about this. One of the things people are looking for, right, is that ROI. But what we have to actually dig in at is we don't get to choose the ROI for the family. And what I've found in doing this for a decade is that every family has a different thought about what the return on investment actually means. Some people define that as like, I want my kid to get a job on the other end. But other people define it as, I want my student to end up in the right place where they can actually help them figure out what their right path is. And to me, that's a good investment. So we always start with, how do you define that family so that we can do the right things along the way that work with this particular family, given their particular definition.
Yeah, and that's an amazing wage, right? Because, what everybody, some people might say, I went to Chapman, so the only place that's good is I want my kids to go to Chapman.
Yeah.
Right. Or
that's right.
Right. So the cost then becomes that's not the answer. But what are you looking at also the vocational schools, or is that something that's out of the scope?
Yeah, so we primarily focus on 4-year colleges and universities. However, there are students and there are states, California happens to be one of them, where it's actually a firm, well-trod pathway from the 2 years into, for instance, some of the UC schools that are just harder for people to get into. They've created kind of a farm system, if you will, through the 2-year universities. And so we look at each individual student on their own, right? Their unique qualities, where they're thinking about going to school, what kinds of things they want to get accomplished, what their current GPA is. There are some kids that we work with. I think people traditionally think about college counselors as only working with the 4.0 kids. Last year, we had a student we worked with who had a 1.9 GPA, but we also worked with the 5.2 GPA kid. So there are some students that have to prove themselves. There are also some students that we work with who are looking at, especially in some of the healthcare fields, right? There are some 2-year paths like ultrasound tech, for instance, or do I want to do the 4-year nursing path? And so looking down both those pathways for the student, helping them compare and contrast. So at the end of the day, they can make their own good choice. I have 5 kids. I always joke, when you have 5 kids, you've had every student. One of my kids didn't go to college, so I'm not a college bigot. I don't think every kid needs to go. What I really want students to figure out is, what is your right path? And then do the best job you can do choosing the best place for you to get that path accomplished.
I love that idea, because every child is not the same, and it's
Correct.
Trying to find that right balance is perfect. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. More with Cozy Wittman when we come back. And $400 a month with no plan is $48,000 gone in 10 years. Do the math. All that and more. Reach me anytime. Off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, shame on you. But the replay is available. Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio.
Are you a veteran, own a home, and need money? The Siegel lending team is here to help veterans refinance and get the money they need. The VA 100 lets you borrow up to 100% of your home's value, refinance your mortgages, consolidate credit cards, and lower your payments by an average of $700 a month. And the Siegel lending team knows that character means more than a credit score. Call 800-306-1990. That's 800-306-1990. Rate subject to change without notice. Licensed by the California Department of Corporations, NMLS 21037, and DRE number 018694552. You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's...
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The Borrow Smart segment today. Borrow Smart being brought to you by rsrwealthbuilder.com, rsrwealthbuilder.com. Here's something most people never notice until it's too late. Your money already has a plan. The only question is whether the plan is yours or somebody else's. I am Ron Siegel, Certified Liability Advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Let me say that opening line again because it matters. Your money already has a plan. The only question is whether the plan is yours or somebody else's. Think about it. Every dollar that lands in your account is going somewhere. If you not give it a job, it finds one on its own, a subscription you forgot about, a little extra at the store, a balance that creeps up on a credit card. None of it feels like a decision. That is exactly the problem. Money that is not told where to go does not sit still and wait for you. It quietly leaves. So what does this mean for you? Here's an example. Picture a couple with a $675,000 mortgage who earns a good income. On paper, they should have plenty left over at the end of the month. But every month, it is the same story. The money is just gone. They're not buying yachts. They're not taking wild trips. The cash simply evaporated into 100 small choices nobody actually made on purpose. That's not a spending problem. That's a direction problem. Here's the part people miss. A budget is not about restriction. A budget is about direction. It's you sitting down and telling your money where to go before the month tells it for you. When you give every dollar an assignment, you stop wondering where it all went. You already know because you sent it there. And this is where it connects to something bigger. Strategy beats rate always. People obsess over chasing a slightly better interest rate while thousands of dollars leak out the side of the boat every single month. You cannot rate shop your way out of a leak. You have to find the leak and plug it. The families who build real wealth are not the ones with the lowest rate. They're the ones who tell their money where to go on purpose every month. Let me give you a number. Imagine just $400 a month slips away with no direction. That's $4,800 a year. Over 10 years before you count a single dollar of growth, that's $48,000. $48,000 that went somewhere, just not anywhere you chose. That's the cost of not having a plan. $48,000 gone to a plan that was never yours. Now, here's the good news. The fix is not complicated. It starts with 3 simple questions. What's coming in? What has to go out? What do you want your money to actually do for you? And when you answer those 3 questions on paper, you take back the steering wheel. And here's an idea most people never hear. What if the cash sitting in your emergency fund could do 2 jobs at once? Stay available the moment you need it and lower the interest rate you pay every single day. That's exactly what our all-in-one loan does. It's called the Wealth Builder loan. And you can see it at rsrwealthbuilder.com, rsrwealthbuilder.com. It puts your emergency fund to work for your family, saving you time and money without locking your cash away. Your money stays yours, and it finally has a job. This is the foundation of everything I teach. Before we talk about your mortgage, before we talk about strategy, we have to know where your money is going right now, because you cannot redirect a dollar that you cannot see. So here's my challenge to you. This week, sit down and give every dollar a job. Not someday, this week. Tell your money where to go before it goes somewhere on its own. And if you want a simple place to start, I have a free tool that walks you through your budget, your next steps, and how to keep track of it all. Go to rsrlinks.com/keysteps. That's rsrlinks.com/keysteps. It's the first step to telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Your money already has a plan. Make sure it's yours. I am Ron Siegel, Certified Liability Advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Thanks for listening to the Borrow Smart segment brought to you by rsrwealthbuilder.com, rsrwealthbuilder.com. Continuing our conversation, we're talking to Cozy Wittman today. College Inside Track is the name of her company, and we're getting a little education on education. So let's continue this conversation, Cozy. So we talked a little bit about trying to figure out where to go and how to go. Does financing the education come into what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So one of the very first conversations we have with people is what's the zone that you're comfortable? Because the US price zone for colleges is so wide that we kind of need to know where people are hanging. Today, you can pay as little as $25,000 a year or as much as $100,000 a year to head off to college. And so we want to make sure that we understand before we start putting schools on the list, right, that where the family falls. And helping them kind of define that, because people come to the table often with kind of incomplete zones, if you will. They'll say things like, we're going to pay 50%. Great. 50% of what exactly? 50% of 90,000 or 50% of 35,000? And so really understanding kind of where the family falls is important. And I love what you said about budgets, right? That they're not there to restrict, but rather to direct. And that's the way that we think about the college landscape as well, is thinking a little bit about what is the budget for college, because you can get over your head pretty quickly. Now, most people don't. I think there's a lot of news that makes it seem like going off to college is too expensive, and why would you even do it anymore? It turns out that the ROI on a bachelor's degree still beats a high school degree almost 2 times over. So it still does pay to go to college. The key is finding the schools that align with the game plan for paying for school, and the colleges make that really challenging because they lack transparency.
That's the biggest challenge right there, I think, and because I would also argue that a lot of it has to do with as a consumer, our ignorance.
Yes, for
right?
sure.
We have no idea. We're thinking, okay, Chapman. Last time I heard, I think Chapman's like 90,000 a year, something like that.
Yep.
But
Yep.
how many people are really paying that?
Right. Well, so that's the challenge, right? Is which schools is that actually the price, and which schools are going to move their pricing? And the way to think about the kind of the college market today from a pricing perspective is not in-state, out-of-state, public or private, right? Which is the way people tend to play. They tend to be playing on the 1996 game board, right? Let's go to college. Right. I need people on the 2026 game board. And those definitions don't really apply anymore when it comes to pricing. So instead, we think about schools as being in high demand or less demand, right? How much marketing do they have? So when we look at acceptance rates, that's a good indicator of whether or not a school will flex their pricing. When we look at institutions that are maybe less well known, those schools will tend to be less expensive because they've all got to fill their freshman classes. And so if I'm a school that has 3, 4, 10 times the number of students I need to fill my freshman class, there's no incentive for me to give away money. Duke last year, 54,000 applications for 1,700 spots. Where is the incentive? These are businesses. They're making business choices, right? If I don't have to incentivize people to come my way, I'm not going to do that. But the schools that don't have quite the same visibility still want the freshman class with the higher GPAs. And so they will bring money to the table to get that accomplished. When we think about the public institutions, this is also true. So what we see from an application trends perspective is those flagship schools in the most popular states in the country don't flex their pricing. So if some kid from some other part of the country wants to go to a UC, they will find themselves paying whatever they're charging for out of 75,000 or whatever it is for a non-resident tuition in the state of California. But if they look at Michigan, they could actually go for the same price as residents go sometimes at schools that are not the flagship schools. So the flagship schools lots of applications, no incentive to give much money away. And they all cry in their soup and say, we don't also have any money because the states keep taking our money. But the reality is, when you look at their endowments, they have ample cash. They're just choosing not to give it away. So if people are looking to pay less, and not everybody is, some people have saved well, some people are high net worth earners, right? But if people want to pay less, you have to look off brand. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that those schools are kind of, we have a tendency to be kind of monofocal in the US around colleges. They're either top 100 or they can't be any good, right? And the reality is there are 3,500 colleges and universities in the US, depending on how you count them. And all of them could be a great fit. The key here is figuring out what is a great fit for your student. And my real grandstanding comes around this concept that somehow acceptance rate equates to rigor. It does not. Acceptance rate equates to volume of applications. And the bigger the brand is, the more applications they receive. That does not mean that they are better or more rigorous than schools that have fewer applications.
So let me ask you this part of it then, because again, I'm not going all the way back to the 1996 playbook, but I only go back to the 2008 playbook.
Sure.
One of the things that we learned from the consultant that we hired was that sometimes you can get into a school that your grades may not qualify for if you're looking at a degree that they want or that they don't have
Correct.
enough people for. Is that still something that goes on now?
That's correct, right? So when you look at some schools, one of the reasons we can look at some schools for students who maybe don't have the highest, so this goes back to what is the average incoming GPA at that school. That matters less than what is the average incoming GPA for the degree, right? So a school GPA will be made up of all the GPAs for each of the different majors, right? And you'll have some majors where the average incoming GPA might be a 3.4, and some where it might be a 3.9. And guess what? That gives you an average right around a 3.6, 3.7. So looking at schools is one thing, but looking at the rigor level of the major is a whole other thing. And so all of that stuff falls under that academic fit thing that I talked about earlier. And that's all stuff we're really coaching our students around is what is the average incoming GPA for the programs that you're interested in? Because you could also find a school, and I'll just use, I live in Minnesota, I'll use the University of Minnesota as my example here. Average incoming GPA for the school is at 3.72, but if you look at the business school, it's at 3.95. If you look at the engineering program, it's a 3.97. So you can look at a school, but that doesn't necessarily tell you if it's the best place for your student, and looking a little bit deeper at the degrees they might be interested in. Now, the challenge, of course, for families is a lot of kids just don't know what they want yet.
And that's another question I want to ask you when we come back is about, can I go in as basket weaving or political science and change over to engineering, like in the example you just made? We'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. Reach me anytime. Off-air number, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you missed any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Are you a veteran, own a home, and need money? The Siegel Lending Team is here to help veterans refinance and get the money they need. The VA 100 lets you borrow up to 100% of your home's value, refinance your mortgages, consolidate credit cards, and lower your payments by an average of $700 a month. And the Siegel Lending Team knows that character means more than a credit score. Call 800-306-1990. That's 800-306-1990. Rate subject to change without notice. Licensed by the California Department of Corporations, NMLS 21037, and DRE number 018694452.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's...
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Mortgage 101 today being brought to you by rsrloans.com, rsrloans.com. Don't have time to give you a lot of story today because we want to get back to our conversation with Cozy Wittman, but I do want to remind you, hey, if you're a business owner, you probably don't want to be going and looking at a loan that's made for a W-2 employee. For a little bit more money, the solution, the strategy for you is a lot better, and it works out. It's shorter. It does not as I always tell people, getting a home loan is a lot like a colonoscopy. Nobody wants one, but you want the good news at the end, right? So why go through all that pain when there are programs out there that are a lot easier and you will qualify in many instances? No guarantees. Mortgage 101 brought to you by rsrloans.com, rsrloans.com. Continuing our conversation, Cozy Wittman is with us. College Inside Track is the name of the company. Before the break, we were talking about getting into college, and maybe you don't qualify to get into, as Cozy mentioned, a Duke or a USC or some of these others because they've got so many people applying. But what if you find the degree that they need people in and you apply there? Cozy, do you guys know at College Inside Track what the degrees are that these schools are really more focused on?
Yeah, for sure. Understanding kind of the top degrees at any particular college is part of our world. That's part of our job. The one thing I'll mention, though, is at a lot of these schools, they've they're not suckers. They've figured out, right, that people will eke in one direction, right, and then transfer over. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that few and fewer schools will allow for that transfer over into the most accepted program in their college. So they kind of block out transfers from other majors. And it's not exclusively true, of course. There are schools that you can do that at, but more and more schools are kind of breaking that down because here's the thing, when they allow for that transfer into that degree from another degree within their college, those kids have lost out on some of what was happening there, right? So it thins out the magic, if you will, a little bit. And so they would rather take brand news in. And then if they have some spaces where kids transferred out, then maybe they'll fill it with that. But it's better for them if they take kids and start them from the beginning and get them all the way through to the end.
So that would also then mean that I guess that you have to have somebody like your company, you and your company, that know whether the school likes transfers or they like somebody that's a 4-year commitment.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons I got into this is the whole industry just makes me furious, right? It's so challenging for families. It should be so straightforward, and it just isn't. And it can be very challenging. There's so much that happens behind the scenes. I always think about college a little like the Wizard of Oz, right? Big benevolent face in the front, but behind the curtain, there are all kinds of levers being pulled that families just aren't aware of. And helping people through that, for instance, hey, there are these secret scholarships at this particular school. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you actually can unlock those. It's a little bit like the mystery menu at In-N-Out, right? That you only get to know about if you live in California. So it's a little bit behind the scenes and insider stuff. And college has become one of those industries where it's just helpful to have an expert help you through it.
So we've talked on Ron Siegel Radio and many times about the idea that in some instances, it can be cheaper to go to a private school than going to a public school. Are you still finding that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So this is where you get into that, trying to walk away from that somehow, that the acceptance rate is reflective of the rigor of the school, because I'll use a school maybe lots of people know, George Washington in the DC area. GW has an 80% acceptance rate. 80%. Wow. So there are a lot of kids that would wrinkle their nose up and go, I'm not going there. They let in everybody. Nope. They let in many more of the many fewer applications they get. They're a pretty unique school. They're very urban, right? They don't have a physical campus to speak of. But in order to fill all their freshman spots and to fill them with students that they are really excited about, they have to bring merit scholarship money to the table. And that merit scholarship money ends up level setting most people with their local flagship school. So you could pay $40,000 a year at your local flagship school, or you could pay $42,000 a year at GW, and GW would say smaller class sizes, better outcomes, all the things that come with a little bit smaller university. And so there's no question. That's why taking that whole definition of public schools are cheap, private schools are expensive. That was me when my kids were getting ready to go. I was like, stay in the state, go to a state school, and I could not have been further from right. One of my kids went to a private school. It was $10,000 less a year than our flagship university.
How does it affect us? Because I hear people talking sometimes pro and con, how your assets are allocated from the family standpoint. Does that hold water, or does it not hold water?
Yeah. So whenever we think about need-based aid, because this is separate and apart, right, from merit scholarship money, if a family has an adjusted gross income of roughly $280,000 or more, it matters not at all where your assets hang out. At about that mark, roughly, you stop getting access to any need-based aid. And it's not an all or nothing game. So what I always come back to with families is, what do you want to pay for a college education? What have you saved for to pay for a college education? Because the question of, do I get need-based aid or don't I, is not all or nothing. You could qualify for $1,000 of need-based aid at that $85,000 a year school. Congratulations, it's now going to be $84,000 a year. Does that change the outcome for you? And so one of the very first things we do is run a FAFSA forecast and an estimation of the CSS profile to figure out, is the family going to be need-based or not? And if the answer is no, it doesn't matter where people's assets sit. So there are a lot of groups that will claim to be able to save you all this money on college by moving assets around for you. And the reality is that almost no one falls into that category.
Interesting. So does your company help with that FAFSA form? I know they say everyone should fill it out, but yes. I think that it's almost like filling out your own taxes. It's it's tough.
Yeah. I will say this, it of course had a very slow start, the new online form. They had a couple of years where it was quite miserable, but now it is functioning, and it's actually relatively intuitive now. It's not like the old form that we used to all dread filling out. And so we do recommend people fill out the FAFSA. And even if you're a high net worth family, there are a lot of schools around the country that accept students at higher rates where they've seen a FAFSA form. So it actually increases your likelihood of acceptance at a bunch of schools around the country. So we recommend everyone fill it out, even if you know for a fact you're not going to qualify for need-based aid.
Interesting. Okay, so tell us about how somebody can get a hold of you, how somebody can work with you. What does the process look like? When do they even start to talk to you about these things?
Yeah. So we love to start chatting with students in freshman, sophomore year. And the easiest of high school. Yeah. Thank you. And then reach out, get a free consultation. I sit down and do a free hour of conversation with any family. You can get to us at collegeinsidetrack.com. There's a free advice button right in the middle of the screen. If you click on that, just make sure that you let them know you heard us on Ron Siegel Radio, and you'll get connected to my assistant who will get you on my calendar, and we'll sit down and chat college for an hour.
Sounds pretty simple to me. I like simple.
Yeah, me too.
Beautiful. So anybody that wants, again, that's it's collegeinsidetrack.com, collegeinsidetrack.com, and check out that free advice button so you can get over there to Cozy. Let them know that we sent you from Ron Siegel Radio. Appreciate you coming on, Cozy. I know there's so much more to talk about. Hopefully we can get you back on again sometime in the future so we can chat more about college planning, because it's a confusing subject. And as we've learned today, it's a changing world. So we need to keep up on what's new and current. Appreciate you, and hopefully you'll be able to come back on with us again. And as always, we ask, set that first radio preset button to come back here and join Ron Siegel Radio, where we only speak about items affecting your house and your bank account. Thanks to all of our sponsors. A big thanks to Josh and Sean who are engineering us today. And of course, a special thanks to you for spending a little bit of your day with us. That's all for Ron Siegel Radio. Again, if you have any questions or to meet any of our guests, call me anytime, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. And remember, make a lot of money so you can help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time on Ron Siegel Radio.